My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I'm about to tell you something that will change how you see trust, marriage, and what you think you know about the person sleeping next to you. 5 minutes ago, I discovered my husband had hidden over $500,000 in offshore accounts while simultaneously taking out loans in my name that I knew nothing about. I wasn't angry yet. I was numb. The kind of numb that comes right before everything falls apart. By the end of this story, you'll understand why I made the decision I did, and why sometimes the person closest to you can be your biggest deceiver. This is my story. Let me take you back 5 years. I was the woman who thought she had it all figured out. I'm a 42-year-old marketing director at a Fortune 500 company. I'd worked my way up from an entry-level position, earned my MBA at night while working full-time, and built a career I was genuinely proud of. My salary was solid, $145,000 a year. Not wealthy, but comfortable, stable. I knew where every dollar went because I've always been the detail person in our marriage. Michael is a 45-year-old investment advisor. At least, that's what I thought he was. He works for Mercer Financial Group, been there for 12 years. His job seemed perfect. He traveled occasionally, had flexible hours, and made decent money. We never really talked specifics about his income, and I realize now that was the first red flag I should have noticed. We met at a conference in 2012. I was presenting on digital marketing trends. He was in the audience. After my presentation, he approached me, told me he was impressed by my analysis, and asked me to coffee. He was charming, attentive, and genuinely interested in what I had to say. We dated for 3 years before he proposed. Michael proposed on a beach in Cabo San Lucas. It was perfect. Sunset, champagne, the kind of proposal that makes you feel like the luckiest woman alive. I said yes without hesitation. We got married in 2016. For the first few years, our marriage was normal. Not fireworks every day, but solid. We had routines. We went out to dinner once a week. We took vacations. We talked about maybe having kids, though we never committed to it. We seemed happy. At least I thought we were happy. Michael was attentive in public. He'd put his hand on the small of my back when we walked. He'd introduce me to his colleagues at company events as my brilliant wife. To everyone around us, we looked like the picture of success and stability. But at home, things were quieter. Michael worked late frequently. I assumed it was because investment advisory is demanding, markets, clients, constant pressure. He'd come home, eat whatever I'd prepared, check his phone constantly, and go to bed. On weekends, he'd spend hours in his home office with the door closed, saying he needed to work on client portfolios. I didn't think much of it. I was busy with my career too. We had separate spaces, separate schedules. I told myself that was healthy. That's what mature married couples do, right? They maintain independence. But looking back now, I see the walls we'd built. Communication had become transactional. How much is the mortgage? When are we paying property taxes? Did you remember to sign the insurance forms? We weren't partners discussing our lives. We were roommates managing logistics. Our finances were complicated, I guess you could say. Michael insisted on handling most of our investments. He said it made sense since that was his expertise. We had a joint checking account for household bills, mortgage, groceries, utilities. But Michael managed all our savings, our retirement accounts, our investment portfolio. He'd show me statements occasionally, but I'll be honest, I didn't scrutinize them like I should have. I was trusting. I was naive. I was, in retrospect, exactly the kind of woman who gets blindsided. 3 weeks before I found out the truth, something small happened. Something I didn't think was important at the time. I needed a document, a W-2 from 2019 for a financial planning review I was doing. I asked Michael where he kept our tax returns. He said they were in his filing cabinet in his office, and I could grab them. I went into his office, which I rarely did, and started looking through the files. That's when I saw it. A bank statement. Not for our regular bank. This was from Cayman Trust Bank, and it had his name on it. Just his name, not both of us. I pulled it out. My hands were shaking, though I didn't understand why. Maybe just surprised. I opened it. The account balance was $287,000. I remember staring at that number, reading it again and again, trying to make sense of why Michael had an account with nearly $300,000 that I knew nothing about. My first thought was that maybe I was overreacting. Maybe this was something innocent. Maybe it was an old account he'd forgotten to close. Maybe there was a perfectly logical explanation. I put the statement back exactly where I found it. I didn't say anything to Michael. I told myself I was being paranoid. A wife shouldn't snoop through her husband's private office. That wasn't trusting. That wasn't the kind of partner I wanted to be. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. For the next week, I couldn't focus at work. I'd be in meetings, and my mind would wander to that number. $287,000. I'd think about our conversations about money. Michael had always been the one saying we needed to be careful about spending, that we couldn't afford certain things, that we needed to save more. And the whole time, he had nearly $300,000 hidden in an offshore account. I started noticing other things. The way he'd quickly close his laptop when I entered the room. The locked filing cabinet in his office that I'd never seen him open. The way he'd become defensive when I asked basic questions about our finances. Things that I dismissed before suddenly felt significant. After about a week of internal debate, I decided I needed to know the truth. Not to be sneaky, not to betray his privacy, but because I'm a woman who needs to understand what's happening in her own life. I have the right to know if my family is financially secure. I have the right to know if my husband is hiding money. So I did something I'm not proud of. I contacted a forensic accountant. Her name was Rebecca Torres. She came highly recommended from a friend who'd gone through a difficult business partnership dispute. I met with her privately at her office, not at home, and I told her everything I knew. I told her about the offshore account. I told her about Michael's defensive behavior around money. I told her about the feeling in my gut that something was very wrong. Rebecca listened carefully and then said something that made my blood run cold. "Sarah, if your husband has an account in your name that you don't know about, that's identity theft. And if he's been taking out loans in your name without your knowledge or signature, that's fraud." I hadn't even considered that possibility. Rebecca explained that she could pull my credit report, look for any accounts or loans that had been opened in my name. She could also help me understand what Michael's legal obligations were regarding shared financial information in a marriage. I authorized her to proceed. 2 days later, Rebecca called me. "Sarah," she said, and I could hear something in her voice, concern mixed with seriousness. "We need to talk. Can you come to my office today?" I made an excuse to leave work early. I told my boss I had a dentist appointment. I drove to Rebecca's office in downtown Chicago, my heart pounding the entire way. When I sat down in her conference room, Rebecca had papers spread across the table. Printouts of credit reports, bank statements, loan documents. She started from the beginning. "Your credit report shows 4 accounts opened in your name in the past 5 years that you claim you didn't authorize. These are all in addition to your regular credit cards and mortgage. They total $218,000 in outstanding debt." I felt like the room was spinning. $218,000, I repeated, unable to fully process the number. Rebecca nodded. "And that's just what showed up on your credit report. Based on the bank statements I've obtained, with your permission, Michael has transferred approximately $502,000 into an offshore account in the Cayman Islands over the past 6 years. There are multiple accounts, actually. At least 3 separate accounts, though I'm still investigating." She showed me the statements. She walked me through the transfers. Small amounts at first. $10,000 here, $15,000 there. Then bigger amounts. $50,000 transfers became common. $100,000 transfers happened at least twice. Where did this money come from? I asked, though I was almost afraid to hear the answer. That's the interesting part, Rebecca said. Most of it came from wire transfers from what appears to be client accounts at his firm. But Sarah, I need to ask you something. Did Michael ever have you sign any documents related to client accounts? Any authorization forms? I thought back. Michael had occasionally asked me to sign things. I'd never really read them carefully. He'd say, "Just a formality, honey, something the firm requires." I'd sign them. I trusted him. "Yes," I said quietly. "He had me sign things." Rebecca's expression hardened. "I think what may have happened is that Michael used your signature, possibly forged, possibly on documents you signed without fully understanding, to access client accounts or to authorize transfers. This is potentially a very serious crime, Sarah. Embezzlement, wire fraud, identity theft." I couldn't breathe properly. This couldn't be happening. This was the kind of thing that happened to other people, not to me, not to my marriage. "What about the loans?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Rebecca pulled out more documents. 3 personal loans, each for between $50,000 and $80,000, all in my name. All opened at banks where I'd never stepped foot. The signature on the loan documents looked similar to mine, but I knew I hadn't signed them. "These appear to have been fraudulently obtained using your identity," Rebecca said. "The funds were then transferred to his offshore accounts. Sarah, I need to ask you directly. Did you authorize any of these loans?" "No," I said. "Absolutely not." "Then this is identity fraud and wire fraud," Rebecca said. She leaned forward. "Sarah, I need to be direct with you. Your husband may be committing crimes, serious crimes. And because your name is on some of these documents, you could potentially be implicated as well, even though you didn't authorize them. You need to talk to a lawyer immediately. Not a divorce lawyer, a criminal defense lawyer." I left Rebecca's office in a daze. I remember driving, but I don't remember the route. I remember the world feeling very unreal, like I was watching my life from outside my body. That night, I didn't say anything to Michael. I made dinner like normal. I moved through the motions. But inside, I was a different person. I was a woman whose entire reality had shifted on its axis. I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed next to my husband, listening to him breathe, and I felt completely alone. The next morning, I called a lawyer, criminal defense attorney named David Rothstein. His office was in a high-rise downtown. When I told him what I suspected, his first words were, "You need to be very careful about what you do next. One wrong move could make your situation worse." David explained my options. I could confront Michael, but that risked him destroying evidence or fleeing. I could go to the police, but then I'd be filing a report against my own husband, and the investigation could take months or years. Or I could quietly gather more information to understand the full scope of the situation before taking any action. "What I would suggest," David said, "is that you hire a private investigator. Get a complete picture of what your husband has done. Get documentation. Then we can decide on your next move." So that's what I did. I hired a private investigator named James Chen. I spent $5,000, money I withdrew from my personal savings account, and I gave him everything I had. Michael's name, his company, the names of the offshore accounts, the loan information. For 2 weeks, James conducted his investigation. I waited. I went to work. I came home. I slept beside my husband and felt like I was living a lie. James's report, when it came, was comprehensive and devastating. Michael had been systematically transferring client money to his offshore accounts for 6 years. He'd accessed accounts that didn't belong to him. He'd used forged signatures and fraudulent documentation. He'd taken out loans in my name knowing I'd never authorized them. He'd created an entirely separate financial life that I knew nothing about. But here's what really got me. James had also found evidence of communication between Michael and a woman named Jennifer Torres, not his colleague. A woman Michael had been seeing regularly at a hotel in Naperville. Hotel records showed reservations in Michael's name for the past 3 years. Credit card statements showed charges to restaurants, jewelry stores, and lingerie boutiques, all for Jennifer. My husband wasn't just stealing money. He was stealing money to fund an affair. I sat at my desk at work and read that report 3 times. By the 3rd time, I wasn't crying. I was angry. Cold, clear, crystalline angry. I had to decide what to do. I spent the next week wrestling with my options. I could leave quietly, hire a divorce lawyer, and let the legal system handle everything. That was the safe option. That was what most people would advise. But I was angry, not just sad, not just hurt. I was furious at the injustice of it all. Michael had stolen my identity. He'd stolen money from his clients. He'd stolen my trust. He'd built an entire lie. And he'd done it all while making me feel like I was the one who needed to be careful, who needed to save more, who needed to justify my purchases. I called David Rothstein back and asked him a question. If I go to the police with this information, what happens? The police would open an investigation into wire fraud and identity theft, David said. Federal investigators would likely get involved because the offshore accounts cross international lines. Your husband would almost certainly be arrested. There would be charges filed. He'd need to hire a criminal defense lawyer. There would be a trial. And me, I asked, what happens to me? You'd be a witness, David said, and technically a victim. Your role would be to provide documentation and testimony about what you discovered. What if I don't go to the police? What if I just want a divorce? David was quiet for a moment. Then you'd be entitled to half of everything, including half of those offshore accounts, once they're traced and frozen. You'd have significant leverage in divorce proceedings. But that's not what I wanted. I didn't want to quietly walk away with my settlement and let my husband face consequences only through family court. He'd committed federal crimes. He'd victimized not just me, but his clients, people who'd trusted him with their money. I realized that I needed to decide who I was going to be. Was I going to be the woman who protected herself and moved on quietly? Or was I going to be the woman who told the truth, regardless of the cost? I thought about Michael's clients. They didn't know that their financial advisor was stealing from them. I thought about other women who might date him after me. They wouldn't know what he was capable of. I thought about the example I would set if I just silently accepted betrayal and moved on. I decided I was going to the police. But first, I needed to tell Michael what I knew, not to give him a chance to explain, not to hear his justifications or lies, but because I needed to see his face when he realized I'd discovered everything. I needed to know for certain that this man I'd married had deliberately and systematically deceived me. I called Rebecca Torres and asked her to arrange a meeting. I wanted her to be present as a witness when I confronted Michael. I also wanted my lawyer David Rothstein to be there. And I wanted it to happen at our home, in our living room, so there was nowhere for Michael to run. I told Michael I needed to talk to him about something important after work. I said I'd made dinner. I kept my voice normal. I gave no indication that I knew anything. At 6 p.m., the doorbell rang. Michael was still at work. David Rothstein and Rebecca Torres arrived first. They sat in the living room. I opened the wine, the expensive wine Michael bought, and we waited. At 7:15, Michael came home. He walked in the door, and immediately something shifted in his face. He saw David and Rebecca sitting on our couch, and I watched understanding dawn on him. Not understanding of what exactly, but understanding that something was wrong. "What's going on?" he said carefully. "Sit down," I said. Michael looked at me, then at David, then at Rebecca. He sat on the chair across from the couch. His jaw was tight. I didn't ease into it. There was no point in prolonging this. "I know about the offshore accounts," I said. "I know about the loans in my name. I know about Jennifer Tours. I know about the client money you stole. And I know about the forged documents." Michael's face went white. For several seconds, he didn't say anything. He just stared at me. "Sarah," he said finally, his voice carefully controlled, "you don't understand the situation." "Then explain it to me," I said. "Explain to me why you felt entitled to steal $500,000 and hide it from your wife. Explain to me why you forged my signature and opened accounts in my name without my knowledge. Explain to me why you committed federal crimes while telling me we needed to be careful about money." "It's not that simple," Michael said. His voice had changed. It had a pleading quality now. "You don't understand the pressure I was under. The investment business is brutal. The market crashed. My performance metrics were terrible. I was going to lose my job." "So you stole," I said flatly. "So I borrowed," Michael corrected, "from client accounts, with the intention of paying it back." "With client money that wasn't yours," I said. "And you did this for 6 years. That's not desperation, that's a pattern." Michael looked at David. "I'm not saying anything else without my lawyer." "You don't need to," David said calmly. "Sarah is here to inform you that she will be filing a report with the FBI. The documentation she has is comprehensive. Your crimes are documented, traced, and verified. She's giving you the courtesy of telling you before federal agents show up at your office." Michael's face crumpled. For a moment, I thought he might cry, but then something shifted again. His face hardened. "You're going to destroy my career," he said, looking directly at me. "You destroyed your career when you decided to commit federal fraud," I said. "I'm just not going to cover it up for you." "If you do this," Michael said, and his voice was cold now, "I will fight you on everything in the divorce, everything. I will destroy you financially in court. I will make sure you lose the house. I will make sure you lose your retirement. I will make you regret this." I felt a chill run through me. This was a side of Michael I'd never fully seen. Calculated, cruel, threatening. But I'd already made my decision, and threats weren't going to change it. "You can hire the best divorce lawyer in the country," I said, "but you're also going to be in federal prison, so I'm not particularly worried about your threats." Michael stood up. "I'm leaving." "You can leave," David said, "but I'd advise you to hire a criminal defense attorney immediately. Sarah's report goes to the FBI tomorrow morning. Once you're arrested and charged, you won't want to run. It will only make your situation worse." Michael looked at me one more time. I saw anger there. I saw desperation. I saw fear. But I didn't see remorse. I didn't see any acknowledgement of what he'd done to me, to his clients, to our marriage. He grabbed his keys and left. Rebecca walked me through what would happen next. David explained the legal procedures. They left instructions for me to follow. And then they left. I sat alone in my living room in the house that was partially paid for with stolen money, and I waited for the police to arrive. The FBI arrived at my door the next morning at 9 a.m. 2 agents in dark suits. They were professional and courteous. They took my statement. They reviewed all the documentation I'd compiled. They asked questions about Michael's work, his habits, his access to client accounts. I answered everything. By 11 a.m., Michael had been arrested at Mercer Financial Group. He was taken into custody. The news hit his workplace immediately. His colleagues were shocked. His clients began calling the firm. The whole operation started to collapse. That afternoon, Mercer Financial Group released a public statement acknowledging that one of their advisors was under investigation for potential irregularities. Within hours, 3 major clients had filed complaints. Within days, a federal investigation was underway. Michael was charged with wire fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement. His bail was set at $150,000. He was released on the condition that he wear an ankle monitor and not leave the state. And then the fallout really began. Michael's mugshot was in the news. Investment advisor arrested on federal fraud charges. I saw it on social media before I saw it on the news. People I knew started messaging me, asking if I was okay, if it was true. Some people were sympathetic. Some people were angry at me for reporting my own husband. Some people thought I should have handled it privately, as if reporting federal crimes to the authorities was somehow a betrayal of marital loyalty. My parents came to stay with me for a week. My mother cried. My father was quiet and angry. They'd known Michael for years. They'd thought he was a good man. They felt betrayed too. Michael's family, meanwhile, blamed me entirely. His mother called me a vindictive bitch and said I'd destroyed her son's life out of spite. His brother refused to speak to me. His sister sent me a text saying, "I hope you're happy now." I wasn't happy. I was exhausted and heartbroken and angry and devastated. But I wasn't sorry. There's a difference. The divorce proceedings were exactly as ugly as I'd expected. Michael hired a very expensive criminal defense lawyer named Richard Feldman, and he also hired an equally expensive divorce lawyer named Patricia Chen. Together, they came at me hard. They argued that I'd breached marital privacy by investigating Michael's finances without his knowledge. They argued that I'd acted out of spite. They argued that my going to the authorities was a calculated move to gain advantage in divorce court. They challenged everything. Patricia Chen was particularly aggressive. She deposed me for 6 hours, asking me repeatedly why I felt the need to spy on my husband, why I didn't just ask him about the accounts, why I decided to hire investigators instead of talking to a therapist about my trust issues. By the time the deposition was over, I felt like I was the one being prosecuted. But I had documentation. I had Rebecca's forensic accounting. I had David's legal analysis. I had the private investigator's report. And I had the undeniable fact that Michael had committed crimes and that my name had been used fraudulently. The court awarded me temporary full custody of our joint assets, pending the final divorce settlement. This meant Michael couldn't touch our bank accounts or our house. He couldn't sell anything without court approval. With Michael unable to access funds, he quickly ran out of money for his defense team. Richard Feldman withdrew from the criminal case. Patricia Chen withdrew from the divorce case. Michael was appointed a public defender. Without the high-powered attorneys running his defense, cracks started to appear in Michael's position. In the criminal case, Michael's public defender advised him to take a plea deal. 6 months of negotiations with the federal prosecutors resulted in Michael pleading guilty to 4 counts of wire fraud and 1 count of identity theft. He was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. In the divorce, with limited legal resources, Michael's negotiating position was weak. He was entitled to half of our assets, approximately $280,000 after accounting for the money he'd stolen. But the court determined that given his criminal conduct and the use of fraudulent loans in my name, the distribution would be modified. I was awarded the house. I was awarded 60% of retirement accounts. I was awarded sole responsibility for the fraudulent loans in my name, but the lenders agreed to settle for pennies on the dollar once they understood the situation. I ended up paying approximately $40,000 to clear those fraudulent debts. Michael received 25% of the remaining assets, about $65,000, after his attorney fees and fines. He also had to pay restitution to the clients he'd stolen from, which was going to be approximately $300,000 over his lifetime, though much of that would be forgiven or adjusted based on his ability to pay while incarcerated. The final divorce decree was finalized 14 months after I filed. I was officially no longer Mrs. Michael Chen. I was Sarah Mitchell again. People wanted to know what I felt now that it was over. Some of them asked with genuine concern. Some of them asked with prurient interest, wanting the juicy details of my pain. What I discovered is that betrayal doesn't have a neat resolution. It's not like a movie where the credits roll and everyone moves on. It lingers. It changes you. The first few months after Michael went to prison were the hardest. I'd get home at night and remember that I could leave my computer open without him checking it. I could go to the grocery store without accounting for every purchase. I could sleep without wondering what he was doing. And that freedom felt perverse. Like I should feel relieved, but instead I just felt sad. I saw a therapist for about a year, Dr. Patricia Williams. She helped me process the betrayal. She helped me understand that what Michael did wasn't a reflection of my worth or my judgment. She helped me separate the shame of being deceived from the shame of deceiving others. Gradually, I rebuilt my life. I got promoted at work. My boss had been impressed by how I handled the crisis, with integrity, with clarity, with the willingness to do the hard right thing. I moved to a senior director role. I made more money. I renovated the house. I painted the walls. I changed the furniture. I made it a space that was mine, not ours. I went to therapy for 2 years and worked through the trauma of discovering that someone I'd trusted completely had lied to me systematically. I learned that trust isn't blind. Trust is informed. And I learned to pay attention to the small signs that something isn't right. I went back to school and got a certification in financial literacy. I wanted to understand money better. I wanted to make sure I was never in a position again where I didn't know what was happening with my own finances. I met a woman named Karen at a divorce support group. We became friends, real friends. We'd get coffee and talk about what we'd learned, what we'd lost, what we'd gained. She was the first person who asked me, "Do you regret reporting him?" I said, "No, I regret marrying him. I regret not paying attention to the warning signs. I regret being so trusting that I didn't verify what he was telling me. But I don't regret telling the truth." Karen nodded. She said, "I wish I'd had your courage. My ex-husband was doing similar things, but I was too afraid to report him. I just took my settlement and tried to move on. But he's still out there doing the same things to someone else." That conversation solidified something for me. Telling the truth hadn't destroyed my life. Staying silent and protecting Michael's secret would have. About 18 months into Michael's prison sentence, I received a letter from him. He was incarcerated at FCI Inglewood in Colorado. He wanted to apologize. He wrote, "Sarah, I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I did to you. I'm sorry for betraying your trust. I'm sorry for using your identity. I'm sorry for the affair. I'm sorry for threatening you that night. I understand now that my actions destroyed our marriage, and I take full responsibility for that. I was wrong. I was selfish. I was dishonest. I spent years building a lie, and I destroyed a good woman in the process. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did, and I'm sorry." I read that letter multiple times. I felt sadness for Michael, but I also felt something else, closure. Not because his apology healed me, but because it confirmed that I'd made the right choice in telling the truth. He was finally taking responsibility. He was finally understanding the reality of his actions. I didn't respond to the letter. There was nothing I needed to say to him. Today, I'm 48 years old. I've been divorced from Michael for 4 years. I own my house outright. I have a healthy investment portfolio that I manage myself, with the help of a financial advisor I trust and who has no personal relationship to me. I have a career that I'm proud of. I have friends who know my story and respect my courage. I'm also cautious about relationships. I'm not going to tell you that I've met someone new and that I'm ready to take another chance on love. I'm not there yet. Maybe I will be someday. Maybe I won't. And I'm at peace with either outcome. What I can tell you is that I've learned some profound things about myself and about life. I learned that my worth isn't determined by my ability to make a marriage work. I learned that protecting someone else's secrets at the expense of my own integrity is never the right choice. I learned that truth-telling costs something, but it costs less than a lifetime of deception. I learned that the people who love me stand by me when I do the hard right thing, and the people who can't, well, that tells me everything I need to know about them. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought I was. Michael is scheduled to be released from prison in 18 months. I think about that sometimes. I wonder what he'll do. I wonder if he'll be a better person. I wonder if he'll have remorse that lasts or if he'll just feel sorry for himself. And then I remember that what Michael does with his life after prison is not my responsibility. My responsibility is to myself, to my integrity, to my future. To anyone watching this who's in a similar situation, who's discovered that someone they love has betrayed them, who's wondering whether to speak up or stay silent, I want to say this. Tell the truth. It will cost you something. It will be painful and uncomfortable and hard. But the cost of silence is higher. The cost of protecting someone else's lie at the expense of your own integrity is a cost you'll pay for the rest of your life. You deserve better. You deserve honesty. And you deserve to be at peace with yourself. Michael taught me that the person closest to you can hurt you the deepest. But Michael also taught me that I'm capable of standing alone, that I'm capable of doing the hard right thing, that I'm capable of surviving betrayal and coming out stronger. And that's a lesson that changed everything. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and this is my story.